How does a fight over a single railway end up toppling a 267-year-old empire? In 1911, that's exactly what happened. China's last imperial dynasty, the Qing, wasn't brought down by an invasion or some grand conspiracy. It was brought down by a train. So, how did one policy decision set off a revolution? Let's dive in.
So really think about that. How can one decision on paper cause the collapse of a dynasty that's been around for centuries? Well, that's what we're going to unpack. We'll follow the chain of events, domino by domino, to see exactly how a fight over money and train tracks in one single province became the spark that lit the fuse for an entire country.
All right, so let's set the stage. The very first domino falls in May 1911. The Qing government rolls out a brand new sweeping policy. They are going to nationalize all the major private railway lines. Everything's going to come under direct state control. Now, on paper, the government's reasoning was all about centralization and progress. They argued that these private companies were just too slow, too inefficient. Their plan seemed simple enough. Take charge, get a massive £6 million loan from foreign banks, and get the job done right. But, and this is a huge but, they completely, totally misjudged how people would react, especially in one province in particular, Sichuan. So, why Sichuan? What was so different about this place? It's because the local railway there wasn't just some project for the super rich. No way. This railway was funded by everybody. I mean, from the wealthy merchants right down to the small-time farmers. And here's how they did it. They used this really unique system called zugu, which basically translates to rental stock. Get this, the government made it mandatory. Part of the land tax that you paid was automatically converted into shares in the railway company. So this wasn't some abstract government project. For almost every family that owned land, this was personal. It was their money, part of their net worth. And you can really get a sense of the mood from this image. For the people of Sichuan, this wasn't just about paying another tax. It was a patriotic, collective investment in their own future. They genuinely saw the railway as theirs. It was built with their money, their mandatory contributions, and for many, their actual life savings. And if you want proof, just look at this number, 77.5%. That's a staggering figure. That's how much of the railway's funding came directly from these small, everyday investors. This project wasn't owned by tycoons. It was owned by the people. So you can imagine when the government suddenly announced it was taking over, it didn't feel like policy. It felt like theft on a massive scale.
So that feeling of betrayal, it was about to get a whole lot worse thanks to the government's compensation plan. The people of Sichuan took one look at the details and realized they were getting a really, really raw deal. And this table lays the injustice out bare. Just look. If you were an investor in Hubei or Hunan, you got a full cash refund. In Guangdong, a pretty fair mix of cash and stock. But in Sichuan, no cash at all. Just a forced swap for some sketchy state-run shares. And to pour salt on the wound, the government flat out refused to cover millions of their funds that had already been lost to mismanagement and corruption. This confirmed everyone's worst fears. This wasn't a buyout, it was a seizure. So what do? The response was immediate, but, and this is important, it was peaceful at first. Local leaders formed the Railway Protection League. Their goal wasn't revolution, they just wanted to protect their investment. They organized petitions, held public rallies, and the movement just exploded, with membership swelling to hundreds of thousands of people.
But as these peaceful protests grew into province-wide strikes, with schools boycotting and people refusing to pay taxes, the Qing government decided it had had enough. And this is where the story takes a very dark and irreversible turn. You can see the tension just ratcheting up. By late August, you have mass strikes. By September 1st, a province-wide tax boycott. That's a huge step. Then, on September 7th, the governor, Zhao Erfeng, makes his move. He arrests the movement's leaders. He probably thought if he cut the head off the snake, the whole thing would just die down. Instead, he lit a match. In response to those arrests, thousands of ordinary, unarmed citizens marched to the governor's office. Now picture this. This wasn't an army. These were just shareholders, regular people, demanding the release of their representatives. They were peaceful.
But when Governor Zhao Erfeng saw this massive crowd of his own people, he made a catastrophic choice. He ordered his troops to open fire. 32. 32 unarmed people were killed. In that single moment, a financial dispute turned into a blood feud. This became known as the Chengdu bloodbath, and it was the absolute point of no return. Peaceful protest was officially dead. Armed rebellion had just been born. News of the massacre spread like wildfire, sometimes on wooden planks floated down the river called water telegrams. It ignited armed uprisings all across Sichuan. The Qing court, now facing a full-blown insurrection, was about to make its second fatal mistake. To crush the rebellion, the court did what any government would do. It sent in its best troops. It dispatched its most modern elite military units, the New Army, from the neighboring province of Hubei. And this was the unintended and absolutely fatal consequence. In trying to solve the crisis in Sichuan, the government created a massive power vacuum in Hubei's capital, Wuchang, a city that just happened to be a known hotbed of revolutionary activity. Now, imagine you're a revolutionary in Wuchang. You've been planning and plotting for months. And then you look out your window and see the government's best troops, the only real force that could stop you, literally marching away. You couldn't believe your luck. They knew this was it. This was their chance. So, on October 10th, 1911, they launched the Wuchang Uprising. With the city's defenses hollowed out, the revolt was a stunning success. And that news, it just electrified the entire country. It set off a chain reaction. Inspired by what happened in Wuchang, province after province started declaring independence from the Qing. The dynasty crumbled with shocking speed. And don't just take my word for it. The connection is so direct that Sun Yat-sen, the man who would become the first president of the Republic of China, said it himself. He explicitly credited the people of Sichuan and their fight over that railway for creating the perfect conditions for the revolution's success. In the end, the Qing dynasty didn't just fall. It was pushed, and that very first decisive push came from ordinary citizens in Sichuan who felt the government was coming for their life savings. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest political upheavals in history don't start in palaces or on battlefields. They begin with economic fears that hit people right where they live.